with any cogency that we can all believe in. But I have somebody else that's going to speak to this and ride along with me in this crazy car this morning, and that would be the co-founder and just a wonderful leader in this space, in this conversation, managing editor and co-publisher, I should say, at Politicus USA, and that would be me welcoming to the show Sarah Jones. Good morning, Sarah. Welcome to Choose Views.
So glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Good to be with you this morning. Glad to have you back, and good to hear your voice. A lot's gone on in the past 2 weeks since we had you on the show, and you've been writing up a storm about all that's happening.
You know what? I think I've forgotten more than has happened because it's typical Trump, right? It's chaos, confusion, reversals, and destruction.
Yeah, and
it's absolutely, yeah.
It's absolutely crazy, and the word chaos keeps coming back. You wrote an article, as you've written so many wonderful pieces in on a daily basis, but you wrote an article, and I talked about this a little bit earlier in the show, about how Pam Bondi and Trump have basically gone silent or been silent regarding this fire to Governor Josh Shapiro's residence. And you know, by comparison to what happened with some of the Tesla dealerships, been set ablaze and all that's happened, they were very outspoken in that space. But they've been crickets in the space of a governor, an elected official of one of the largest, most populated states in the country, that their life was put at risk. But yet, the president and the attorney general have seemingly nothing to say about that.
Yeah, it's very troubling because I think everyone expects this kind of thing from him at this point, where he politicizes everything, including life-threatening. You know, he did it during COVID. This is what he does. He's like Josh Shapiro refused to. Josh Shapiro endorsed the hands-off protest. He refused to comply with their efforts to kill diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in schools. And so Donald Trump doesn't like Josh Shapiro. And so Josh Shapiro's life and his family's life and his children's life it means nothing to Donald Trump. That's who he is. And I think maybe if he registered himself as a Tesla or they owned a Tesla, maybe then the administration would care. But it's really, you know, we saw this during COVID, and I just still cannot believe that voters thought that we should go back to this. That always, every time something like this happens, I just keep thinking, did no one remember what he did during COVID? How he, you know, withheld life-saving things from certain states as a retribution? That's who he is.
Well, right here in the state of Illinois, our own Governor Pritzker has spoken to that on a number of occasions, where not only did they hold back, but what was then sent were devices that were non-functional, and the governor had to, what would I say, that they had to go out and get their own equipment, and equipment that was working to be able to provide the safety elements that were needed to residents and citizens of the state of Illinois. And so, you know, it just goes to show the cravenness of this president. Let me ask you your thoughts about this conversation around Trump's health report and what you have seen and been reporting on in that space.
Well, Donald Trump is very good at propaganda, as I think we all know. And so, you know, this time around, they didn't use some random doctor that no one could find. But so I guess we're supposed to be impressed by that. But the things that they put forth, you know, the wording is always questionable. And when you look at what they put forth, they're saying what a great job he's done at winning at golf, and that this proves how healthy he is. And of course, you know, that is not true. Riding around in a golf cart and then taking a swing, we don't even know if he actually wins these games. Like, all of this is told to us in these stories from people who are unreliable narrators. So I think what's really weird, and I know you're going to, like, we should talk about this, like, what happened with the media? Do you remember in the election, like the whole year leading up to the 2024 election, how the media kept telling us that Joe Biden had cognitive issues because they spotted a neurologist coming to the White House, and it turned out he was doing clinics for veterans at the White House that they've been doing forever. But no one is saying a word about this man who doesn't even make sense. He doesn't even know what's going on. A lot, like, they'll ask him a question about something that his administration has just done, and he won't even know what that is.
Well, and remember, Sarah, wasn't it a week before last where there was an event that was held at the White House on one of the lawns, and it was for Trump to sign one of his executive orders, and he was more enthralled with waving and glad handing and talking to people, and then he damn near forgot. Well, he did forget that what he was there to sign, and he walked away, and they had to catch him and redirect him back to where he was supposed to sign this executive order. And so, but the point we're making is the mainstream media isn't jumping on that and making it an entire news cycle. But if former President Biden happens to have a doctor come to do what they are doing to help other members of the staff, it's suddenly that we're hiding Biden's cognitive issues. And so the mainstream media, and a lot of people don't want to, they want to get away from talking about what the mainstream media is not doing, when in fact the mainstream media has become a tool of this administration. It was a tool in the previous administration, the previous term of Trump, and it's become a tool yet once again. And they're not calling themselves out because they know that if they do, that they're probably going to lose some favor with this White House.
It's absolutely become a tool, and that's why it's important. And I too am fed up with them, and I don't like thinking about it because frankly, it makes me so angry that people that are in my profession, a lot of people that I looked up to are behaving this way. And that has been I'm still grieving this kind of massive loss of ethics and basic principles that we are seeing. But here's just an example. Like, it's not even just that they're going along with it to get favor from him, right? And that's like this oligarchical structure that they are allowing themselves to be a tool of. And then when I look at why they would rather have Trump in the White House, was it his chaos because he brings so many new eyeballs to the media? Or is it that Joe Biden was doing all these regulatory things? Like, remember, Trump just rolled back the Biden era rule that limited bank overdraft fees to $5.
Right.
And it's things like that, right, that helped everyday people. And the media doesn't seem to care about those things. In fact, I would say they're almost on the other side of it. So to them, someone like Trump, who's taking away all the regulations, is the hero. So they're going to give him all of this leeway on his cognitive issues that we can all see. And I think they're gaslighting the American public when they present him. Like, talk about the tariffs that you were talking about before I came on, and the way that you were talking about these CEOs and how they've been negligent in their duty as Americans. People who benefit from the American system, they benefit from our tax dollars every day. They use the infrastructure that we all pay for. And a lot of them don't even pay the taxes that they should, as we all know. But those people are silent. They're enabling all of this. And the media is part of that. That's what they have become. They're the big mega conglomerates. And so they benefit the most when they have someone like Donald Trump in office who, lets them get as big as they want to be, as long as they at some moments, they sound like Russian state TV now.
Yeah. And you have a direct, I guess you say, direct link into that space because you've been a part of it and you know what should be happening versus what is actually happening right now. And even in this conversation, Sarah, around the raising of prices on prescription drugs, I want to get your take on what you think is going to happen in that space and where you see us going there.
Well, I think that's, what Donald Trump does is he makes all these announcements, then he walks them back, and then he makes them again, and then he walks them back again. We just saw this weekend about the tariffs in a variety of ways on electronics and smartphones. Like first they said, yeah, that's going in. Then he had people out on all the TV shows. No. And then, that is going in. Then Trump said that was fake news. And then they walk it back again. So this is what he does about everything. So now he's saying this about drug prices. But we all know what's going to happen next is the drug companies are going to flip out when they see any of this impacting them. And then they're going to have to find a way to convey that to Donald Trump. Will he take that feedback? I don't know. I mean, one of the things that we see Republicans thinking about, but not having the courage to confront Trump with, is that a lot of their supporters are older people who are on Social Security, who are on Medicare, and who do have a number of prescriptions that would be impacted. And they see that that's eroding their own support.
Yeah.
But they don't, right? But they don't seem to have the courage. And like you're talking about these CEOs, they also don't have the courage to tell Trump this stuff to his face. So they try these roundabout ways of announcing layoffs, publicly after the tariffs. That's how they're conveying information to him. And as we all saw with the tariffs, it wasn't until the bonds were being sold off that the whole market looked like it was going to melt down, and the economic system, the value of the U.S. dollar, was going to implode. That he finally, people yanked his chain enough that he did something to respond. And so people they talk about him as if he has these ideas about tariffs. So I try to, even though I have a very difficult time believing that he has political ideas, really, because he's such a shapeshifter. And his only ideology seems to be enriching himself. That seems to be the one driving force, and to turn America into kind of a Russian or a Hungarian, the oligarchs and kind of an autocracy instead of a democracy. But I investigated where they claim his tariff ideas are coming from and what he supposedly believes that a lot of Republicans, according to polls, actually think is happening. So they think he's bringing jobs back with these tariffs, but he is not doing anything to reindustrialize the United States. So if you're going to put tariffs like that, first of all, this isn't the way that you would do that. But secondly, if it were some feasible road to that, then you would also be having this industrialization policy. You would be doing what Joe Biden did, actually, of creating all these jobs. Former President Joe Biden worked with all these private companies to create a lot of manufacturing jobs here in the United States. And so those are the things you would see Trump doing if he actually was trying to create jobs.
Well,
but it looks like
to that point, Sarah. No, sorry. To that point, and you wrote about this in terms of, the companies can't, pick up a factory and move it to the United States. It takes time to I reported on this earlier where, there are companies, there's, let me grab this exact, a bit of information that Novartis is planning on building 6 new U.S. plants, but they know that they're not going to build them immediately. And they're not going to be ready immediately and operational and all the other benefits that come from that. And a lot of the folks that are part of MAGA, and even now it seems like much of the GOP, seems to think that if Trump says we're going to drop these tariffs on other countries, that's going to have an immediate impact on jobs coming back to the United States or companies coming back to the United States or reducing the cost of doing business with other countries. And it's not. The only thing that it's consistently, without any opinion, factually causing is chaos in our financial markets and companies that are responding with, we're going to have to lay people off. And in many cases, the jobs that are being impacted are held by people that are voters that vote for the GOP, that vote for MAGA. But they don't seem to want to learn that this is not a strategy that's going to move us forward. And I mean, you even talked about this in one of your articles about companies can't just pick up a factory and place it someplace else. It takes time. It does take that time. And Biden was headed down that path because he was offering, tax incentives to companies and ways in which they could immediately, not immediately, but in a lesser period, but defined period of time, say, this is what this tax break will do for this company, and this is how it's going to affect their hiring. And this is not the case right now with Trump.
He has done nothing about that. And if that doesn't reveal his true motives, then I don't know what will. I mean, remember what he did after the market plunged and then they came back, and he said something about he pointed to people in the Oval Office with him. He made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million. That's not bad.
Yeah.
And that is how he sees all of this, right? It's all about making money for himself and the people who are loyal to him, and the rest of us, including the people who vote for him, he doesn't care about. And I think even when you look at the SAVE Act, that the Voting Restriction Act, that I see a lot of people framing that as something that's really going to harm women, and that's true. But really, it's aimed at people who don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's yet another attack on people who don't have money, right? Because who cannot get a passport? Who doesn't have time to take a whole day off of work, to take a bus, to go get all the documents they need to be able to vote, if they have to vote with a passport?
And that's that's the other side of it. I talked about this a few weeks ago, and you wrote about it, how it's an attack on democracy by taking away from the people who need it the most the tool that they need the most to affect democracy, and that's the ability to vote, the ability to participate in the democracy. And so I don't know why there are not more people who are screaming more loudly that are regular everyday voters at this particular bit of legislation. It's only going to help those who are in states, or I shouldn't say that in states, but are in areas where they've already got a lock on voting. And this is another voter suppression tool. And you've written eloquently about how this is going to harm so many people in that particular category.
I just saw a poll, and I think it was like 80% of Republicans think that his tariffs are going to bring jobs here and that they're really going to help the economy. And it is literally doing the opposite to the economy. Like, I think if someone were to ask me my complete opinion, this is not based on facts, but my complete opinion about what Trump is doing, I would have to say that he is trying to destroy a lot of the pieces that make the United States, that have made the United States the superpower that it was. And why is he doing that? I really couldn't say. Is he doing it on purpose? I don't know. But if you just look at what he's doing, that is what he's accomplishing. He's done it with these tariffs, and he's doing it, this isolationist policy, his siding up with Russia. That is what he is undermining the United States. And we see Europe and Canada working together to cut the United States out of their supply chains and their responses to attacks on global democracy, because they know they can't trust the United States. And that's really what his tariffs did. They undermine the trust and the respect that people all the countries around the globe had in the United States economy. And I don't think there's a more effective way to destroy a country than to do that.
Well, and also, Sarah, the connections that we've had with our biggest and strongest allies. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, one of the leaders from the UK and another from Canada, to your point, said openly We aren't going to, we are no longer going to position ourselves as being not dependent on the United States, but even confident that the United States right now will be a partner when it comes to any global issue, and not just issues of military fighting or military movements by other countries. There's no feeling from them, and you can see it, that they can trust the United States to be there. Now, when we talk about the economies, they also know that they can't trust the United States. And you kind of have to understand, if you were in their positions, why would you trust the United States right now? And that's not meant to be negative, but putting ourselves in the shoes of our allies, why would you trust us? Why would you have any faith that we were going to be there, not just for them in a military sense, but in a very practical, let's keep the peace on all spaces and places, economics, healthcare, our environment. The United States is, I like the word you use, isolationist, is pulling away from actually being a player in global security.
That's so well said, and that is exactly what I see happening. And I don't think that those voters, like for instance, that you're talking about, the MAGA voters, I don't think they care about that, and I don't think they understand what it means, because they have been slowly kind of indoctrinated to believe that the only country that matters is the United States. But the United States only matters globally because of its allies, because of these partnerships that, this country has spent so long building up. And those are always, they're not easy relationships all the time, but it takes all of these skilled negotiators to keep everyone at the table getting enough needs met that they continue to work together. And we see that Donald Trump operates the exact opposite. He comes in, he's like a wrecking ball, and he thinks that if he scares everybody and takes everything away from them and bullies people, that they're all going to succumb to them. But this time what they said was, oh, you want to bully us? Fine, we're not going to deal with you anymore. Here's retaliatory tariffs back on you, and we're going to go and we're going to try to partner around you. And there's even talk that some of the Europeans are working with China. What are they going to do? They're going to cut the United States out altogether.
And it's already happening. And one of the things that I think is concerning when we look at our financial markets, Sarah, is that, and this is a text that I got earlier, that as I spoke of last week, we saw that the pausing in the tariffs caused a little bit of stability, a little bit of recovery. But the phrase that was sent to me is that it's being referred to, that stock market short rebound, as a dead cat bounce. And I hadn't even heard that phrase, right? But that's the manipulation, to your point, going back to what you said when he was, I believe they were in the White House. If they were in the Oval Office, I can't remember. But he turned to one of the people there and said, yeah, you made $2.5 million and you made $900 million. First of all, that just goes to show the arrogance of saying it publicly like that, when there are people who voted for him that lost money during the same period of time. And so I would say, based on that conversation, that there is some market manipulation that's taken place. Knowing, and Sarah, you saw what Marjorie Greene posted, that how much she sold off and then purchased. So there's some market manipulation that's taking place. Specifically, what's happening, we don't know. But I will say that to the experts that I've been listening to, there's an edge of shorting the market that's going on, and that has gone on in these past 2 weeks.
Can you imagine if Democrats operated the way Republicans did, that all of those people would be accused immediately without any, we don't even need proof, we just know that you have been out here making some trades, and then we just accuse you of betting against America.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they would be saying if these were Democrats that were doing that, because that's literally what they've been doing. They're putting if those things are true. Now we're going to find out, I guess it's May 15th. Their disclosures are due. I think that's the date. Of course, they may not even disclose anything. Who's going to hold them accountable? I think we're in such a weird landscape right now. And I'm really curious to get your thoughts about all these financial things, because I know that you're an expert in that area. And I was wondering what you thought about the United States, and I don't this is not the way that I would like to see a democracy operate, but this is the way that this one has operated for a long time, where sort of the business elite and these large chunks of political elite, they have worked together and they were able to bully Americans to get whatever they wanted. And I think during the Bush crash, we saw that it was the big banks bailed out. When you think about what's happening now, I've seen a lot of Trump supporters say, oh, well, he's standing up to those people. He's not going to be bullied by them. He's just doing what's best for us. But in fact, it looks like what's actually happening is he is not taking instructions from American business. That's a lot of times true, although I think that's ultimately why he backed down. But what he is, he's trying to turn this into where where he, as a president, it will be more like Russia, where he makes all of the policy. There's no input, certainly not from the people.
To kind of respond to that, and I know we're getting close, so we got to wrap up. But and thank you for the compliment about my financial acumen. I have been fortunate enough to work with some great people in that space, and I don't give financial advice to our listeners, but I will definitely respond to your question as to the why and the what. I'll tell you this, Sarah, and a lot of people are afraid, I believe, to say this, is that the Trump wanted, and he said this during the campaign, he wanted to be in a position to have domain over the different departments of the federal government, and particularly the financial departments and the financial and have jurisdiction over what takes place when it comes to taxes, when it comes to tariffs, and when it comes to what? Interest rates. So there is, based on that and what's happening now, and then the DOJ not investigating what happened, and the SEC, he wanted also Trump to have domain over the SEC. There's clearly enough evidence where there are different folks in charge in the departments of the government, but also in terms of what's happening in Congress. If Congress were Democratic led right now, there would be investigations. There's enough there. There's more, the old phrase, where there's smoke, there's fire. Without a doubt, we would see that if Congress were led by Democrats, because there's data that's there. There's data and information that's there. We'd be able to track what DOJ is doing if Congress were led by Democrats rather than Republicans. So it speaks to the importance, everybody, of making sure that we do take these small wins as wins, and we keep working toward flipping the House of Representatives. I know this next year and a half is going to be brutal in that space without having Congress, without having the House particularly. But yes, I do believe that there is a certain amount of evidence to show that there's manipulation that's gone on, and that's where we've got to dig in deep and force the hands of our elected officials to do more in that space. Sarah, it's great to have you with us, and I'll make a little announcement to everybody. Sarah's going to be with us every other week to bring her wonderful writing and brand and mind to our conversation, and helping to make sure that all of our progressive liberal Democrats anywhere in the country can take advantage of Sarah's knowledge and what Sarah does and all the work that she brings to what we do here. So I'm excited to have you be a part of the show, Sarah, and thank you so much for your willingness to get up early in the morning and have a little fireside chat with me here in Chicago. So we appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Rich. I am so honored that you asked, and I am really looking forward to hearing from your listeners who their engagement in this process was really invigorating.